And we're back for another exciting episode of the Creators Collective. And this is going to be an exceptionally fun week because we have a special guest named Will, who has finally decided to join us. Thanks for coming along, Will. But on top of that, we actually have an actual guest, not just Will being on here, but
we have two guests this week, right? Did you just say that? I don't know.
I just said that.
Oh,
someone had his headphones off.
I had to go get my my new laptop, my new old laptop that cost me $750 because somebody at the airport spilled water on it. So yeah.
Well, we have a special guest here, Tomy Hovington, and if you haven't seen his stuff, where have you been? But why don't you say hi, Tomy?
Hi, everybody.
Is it Tommy or I feel like I've heard people say Tomy.
Well, it's always been like an issue growing up because I'm from back east, and my parents wanted to call me Tommy, which is an English name, but I'm French Canadian. So they decided because of my last name, they wanted to shorten the first name. So they called me Tommy with one M, which doesn't make any difference in French. But then since I moved to the English world, like everybody's like, how do you say your name? So either way, I'm good with
when people ask you, what do you say?
I just say Tommy.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So where do you live?
I'm on Vancouver Island.
Oh, okay. So actually, we're going to be kind of close to each other when I move up in that direction.
Yeah.
Planning on Bellingham. You've probably been there, huh?
Oh, yeah. I was going to the Trader Joe's and the Costco.
Yeah.
To get all the cheese and the cheese stuff over there. When I was on the mainland, yeah.
Have you been to Grizzly HQ when you go down to Bellingham? Have you been to the Grizzly showroom?
No, I haven't been there.
Okay, cool.
So French Canadian.
Yep.
Coming to America for cheese. There's something wrong with that picture. Aren't we the laughing stock as far as cheese is concerned in the whole country, in the whole globe?
Wait, is this going to be another episode where we talk a lot about cheese?
Did we have another one of those?
Yeah, you were looking
at the cheese knives.
That's right. Oh yeah, the cheese knife. Yeah.
I will say that the whole Wisconsin cheddar thing is real. It's a real thing.
Yeah. Well, it's so cheap over there. Even in it's not just the US. It's cheap. You go to France or you go to Europe, cheese is cheaper. It's just in Canada for some reason it's really really expensive. So
that's like wine and beer in Europe.
We make up for it with our healthcare. So
yeah. All right. So Tomy Hovington, for anyone that doesn't know who Tomy Hovington is, Tomy, why don't you tell us a little bit about you and what you do, and tell us about you.
Okay. Well, I'm a woodworker. For starts, I've been also in the steel trade for about 22 years, doing structural and trailers, big trailers. My woodworking comes down from my family. So both my grandfathers were both woodworkers, and one of them I would compare to Paul Sellers. He was kind of the guy that had all the little tricks and stuff, but I was too young to kind of understand all of that when I was a kid. So I started my journey when I got my first workshop. I was about 22 years old when I bought my first house, 23 years old. It was a tiny shop and kind of started fooling around with pieces of wood and started like everybody else with a little piece of furniture here and there. And then I wanted to add a bit more dimension. So when I moved out west here, I ended up making a wood strip kayak, which was fun because you could actually make something that's nice and then take it outside and use it. But then I wanted to add more dimension once again. So I went into lutherie, which is you have to make something that looks good, that's usable and playable, and it needs to sound good as well. So it was just to try to push the woodworking to, I guess, its limits, I guess.
Yeah, and you make some incredible instruments.
Thank you.
And it sounds, I feel like you're my hero, because that cedar strip canoe and a guitar are both on my bucket list, and you've done, you've taken those, you've done that. So that's pretty awesome. So I'm definitely going to pick your brain
Yeah, for sure.
Once I jump into one of those projects. So sorry, I'm totally taking over the podcast because I'm kind of geeking out that we have Tomy Hovington on the podcast today. So what would you say is a good instrument for somebody with a pretty basic shop without any specialty lutherie equipment?
I would say if somebody wants to try something, just to see if they're able to make something, a ukulele would be a good place to start. It's very small. It doesn't cost a lot. You can, like, I made one out of a 2x4 for the 2x4 challenge, and it still works. Like, I didn't think it was going to last that long because the wood wasn't dry properly and all that stuff. But no, it's still going, and yeah. So that would be a good place to start. Yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, I guess I'll throw it back to James to get our normal routine started.
Well, actually, I'm going to throw it back to Tomy, and let's start off with what we're working on. And since you're the guest, why don't you take it off?
Well, I just finished an H5 mandola for a customer in the States going to Wisconsin.
AKA known as the most sexy instrument ever.
That's the sunburst one, right?
Yeah, well, they all kind of have the sunburst like that with like the wood supplier I use has just got the amazing selection, and I can pop the grain like that on pretty much every one of them. But so yeah, that instrument was done, and then during shipping, the customer expressed some concern with the packaging, so we decided to make a case for it. So the last project I finished was a vintage-looking carrying case for the H5 mandola. Yeah.
So what's the difference between a mandola and a mandolin?
It's like in the violin family. Like you have the violin, you have the viola, and then you have the cello and the bass. So the mandolin it's tuned the same to start, and then so basically it's a violin that you pluck with a pick, and then you have 4 extra strings on. But it's the exact same as a violin. So if like the mandola would be the second brightest instrument in the family.
Okay, so it's just a little bit bigger.
Yeah.
A little bit bigger body. Okay.
Yeah.
Every day.
So how do you pop the grain? So what's your process of, finishing an instrument and getting the grain to pop as much as you do? Because that.
I use leather dyes. And by using leather dyes, you can, and I made a video on the whole process of that H5 mandola on how to pop the grain. But like you basically start with the lighter colors, and you make sure you don't have any more scratch. I think I sent it to 400, and then you kind of put the dye on, and then you use denaturalized alcohol to wash all the high grain. So basically, all the quilted or the curly has high and low grain. So when you wash it off, there's still a bit of residue left, but it falls into the low grain, and then you can build up your colors like that. So it's like I think I spent 3 hours putting color on the mandola total from start to finish. So it's labor intensive. It's all hand rubbed, but like you get like results that speaks for themselves. Yeah.
Yeah.
What? How do you like finish it? Do you do like French polish or?
No, on that one I use lacquer. It's all about like what the customer wants, but the instruments before, when I did the octave mandolin, it was a French polish, and then this one we went with a lacquer. I think it was a Sherwin-Williams lacquer that I used for that one. Yeah.
All right. Cool. All right. Well, Zack.
Yes.
What have you been working on?
Man, so much going on. There's always so much going on. It's my canned response. Well, a couple of things. Trying to figure out where to start. So a friend of mine, Cliff Dufton, the guy that I did one of the 2 people I took the hammer forging course in Newark a few weeks ago. We decided to get in the striking anvil / Swage block business. for any smiths out there, you'll know how hard it is to find good swage blocks, I think that you go back and forth. I've heard them they're spelled swage. Some people pronounce it swedge. I don't know. But what they are is they're just big, heavy blocks that have different reliefs and holes and bolsters and stuff through them, so that when you're, trying to drift holes and stuff, you have something that you can work on top of. And a striking anvil is exactly what it sounds like. It's not an anvil, a proper anvil, but I mean, if anybody's seen Alex Steele, they'll know what a striking anvil is. He works almost exclusively on them. It's pretty much just a hunk of steel. It's usually softer steel, like mild steel, that you can really like wind up and swing away with a sledge and just kind of do a lot of brute work on. And you don't really, if you miss, it's not a big deal because you're not messing up a $2,000 anvil. So we've decided essentially to try and combine both of them into one piece. And the swage blocks are really hard to find. Most of the ones that you see out there just have reliefs for spoons and stuff. They don't actually have through holes for drifting and all that sort of thing. So I ordered a 2-inch by 8-inch by 14-inch chunk of mild steel, which is like almost $200 just for the steel. And I'm having the bolsters water cut through it. So this is kind of a going to be like a prototype, and I'll build a stand for it and put it through use and see how I like it. And if I do like it, then we're going to probably make a handful of them and put them up for sale in the community. So yeah, that's kind of exciting. That's one of the things I've been working on kind of in the background. And I'm working on a video you can see here. That's actually a piece of spalted oak that I've just had sitting next to my house for like a year and a half. And it's totally rotten and all bug eaten and stuff, but I stabilized it and it looks super cool. Like, I can't believe this is just garbage wood. It looks better for being worse, like letting it set out and just turn to garbage and then stabilize it.
Describe it for our listeners.
Yeah, could you describe it?
Did I just do that?
No, you just hold it up and say this is a cool thing, but what is that thing?
Oh, so this is actually going to be a file handle, and this is Alumilite epoxy, and I kind of cut into it and made those scallops and then cast it in the resin, and that's where the file's going to go in. So I'm doing a set of 5, and I'm trying to do 5 totally different designs. Although I already screwed one of them up, man, it's working with epoxy can be super frustrating. As I'm sure, I think you actually probably have a better story, James. How much money worth of epoxy did you have run out of your table onto the floor?
About $300.
Oh man, how did you handle that?
A lot of deep breathing.
Yeah, I need to start doing that because that's not my first reaction when things go wrong.
Went to my favorite yoga class and relaxed.
So I did the most obviously stupid thing. I think I probably got it on film too. I haven't watched it, but I had this super cool, like, I don't even know what kind of wood it is. I should have brought it in to show it to you, but it's like Swiss. It's like the Swiss cheese of wood. I don't know what happened to it, but I have it all stabilized. I made the mold for it, and I mixed 2 parts of part A. I'm sure it looks absolutely ridiculous on camera. You probably see me open one of the gallon containers, pour it in, mix in the dye, set the container down. 5 seconds later, grab the same container, pour it in. And yeah, so the problem with that is
it never cures.
The frustrating thing with epoxy is that you don't really know until it's too late. You don't, and especially since I'm doing it in a pressure pot. So I pour it, mix it, yada da, and then throw it in there, bring it up to like 55 pounds, come back an hour and a half later. And I'm like, oh, nothing has happened. So I tried pouring it out, doing it properly, and it just didn't set. I mean, whatever, the ratio it wouldn't stick to the block. So it was kind of a throwaway. So that was my yesterday pretty much, is just because I was three times in the pot for an hour and a half. So, it was a good chunk of my day. but I'm learning a lot of things. And I've been using the, that like corrugated plastic PVC stuff.
Yeah.
So
chloroplast.
Yeah. So something else that I learned, when I'm making the mold, I'm hot gluing the ends up to hold the shape. Well, obviously those sections, if you glue the ends up, are pressurized, or they're not pressurized. And if you pressurize everything around it, it like distorts. So the last time I had it in there, what happened was, the pressure, it ballooned up or sucked in or something. So it was no longer flat on the bottom. So it fell over inside of the pot, and I come back an hour and a half later, open it up, and all the epoxy is cured this time, but it's actually it's cured to the bottom of my pressure pot. So yeah, there was no deep breathing. I think I took short breaths.
That's when you just like shut it all down, like go do something else, go fishing.
It's just every now and then you just have those days, and it's compounded by the heat here. It's been really hot. I don't know.
Yeah.
I need new curse words because I'm out.
You need to learn French. There's a lot in French.
Yeah.
And they sound good.
They do. Yeah.
What's a popular one? Since I think does that count for? I mean,
well, isn't it like PG friendly?
Only in English though.
It is only in English.
Oh yeah.
There's got to be one that sounds nice, because everything sounds nice in French. But
you can say tabarnak, and that would be one.
Yeah, that sounds nice.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
Oh, it's all the curse words are church based. So basically, that would be the hotel where they do like the whole preparation of the ceremony. That's the tabernacle. So that's what it is.
Oh, tabernacle, as we would call it.
Yeah. So you can start swearing as well in English, and then
you can just go down your shop and say, tabernacle.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah. That's funny.
Well, on that note, Will, what you got going on?
Oh man, I'm all over the place. So the pool is, we're putting in a pool. So the pool part is actually in now, but along with the pool, we're building what we're calling the cantina, which will be like a multi-purpose building it'll have a bar and some seating area, and then on the inside it has a kitchenette and a bathroom, and I'm going to build a Murphy bed for when we have company, and so I've been organizing. I've been putting my general contractor belt back on, and been organizing subcontractors, plumbers, excavators, gravel trucks moving gravel, getting ready for concrete, block masons. So I've been just like full bore working on that. I finally finished that dining table that I've been talking about forever. The pedestal trestle table, dining table out of walnut. I delivered that to the client and they absolutely loved it. So that was great. I get to do a lot of new stuff in that table that I had never done before, like turning giant pedestals out of big laminations. I did drawboard tenon breadboard ends on the table. I made a dowel plate. I got to the Stanley, help me out, James, shoulder plane.
A bunch of them, 78, 79.
78. Yeah, the Stanley 78. And then on Tuesday, Lynn and Matt from Darbin Orvan were in my shop, and we were playing around with making tool belts out of leather. And so that was my first time working with leather, and that was a lot of fun. They're moving relatively close to me, so we're going to do some more projects together, start doing some meetups, get them.
Where are they moving?
They're moving to Goochland, Virginia, which is just outside of Richmond, which is about an hour away from me. So they drove across the country, and they've been living in hotels, and they were ready to be in a house. So, so that was super fun.
They're leaving Oregon.
Yeah, we talked about that on the podcast. They were leaving, and you wanted to go up there. And But yes, that's what I've been working on. How about you, James?
I've actually been working on the table. Surprise, surprise. This is turning into the new dresser. I was hoping to have it done in the month of July, but as things turn out, it probably won't be done until September. But it's coming along. I've started working on the base, and so now it's upside down on the table. The whole table's upside down. But then Tuesday, I did the live video on how to make pocket holes, the traditional method. And I started a crazy argument going back and forth on pocket holes.
Really, pocket holes are controversial in the woodwork?
Well, not just having pocket holes, because I kind of covered that. They are a traditional toolworking. As long as screws have been around, pocket holes have been around. And they are a really good method for actually holding a skirt onto a tabletop. It's a very functional, very useful joinery method. I don't hold very well to building an entire piece out of them, but it's a good way to get started and build things. But the controversial thing is, okay, you're making a T with wood, and one piece is butt jointed into the edge of another piece. So do you put the pocket hole through the long grain and into the end grain, or do you put it through the end grain and into the long grain? And Craig Jig says you put it through the end grain and into the long grain. But for a Craig jig, I have no problem with that. And most of the time, you're going to be working with like pine, where the threads could pull out of the long grain very easily. But when you cut it by hand, not using a Craig jig, you end up leaving less material on the head side of the board. So when I make it with hardwoods and I make my own pocket holes opposed to using a Craig jig, I go through the long grain and into the end grain. And in doing that in my video, I had this crazy amount of argument going back and forth. You're doing it wrong. You're doing it wrong. You're doing it wrong. And so I think this is kicking off a whole new testing series for me of testing pocket holes.
You should make your own. You should make your own jigs, like the Gurk jig. Craig backwards.
I like it. So actually,
Jerk jig.
That's funny. Before the Craig jig, I worked in a cabinet shop, and the guy that ran the shop used to make his own pocket holes with a spade bit and a cordless drill for like attaching. What would he attach? Anything you'd have to attach, but he would take the spade bit and he would start upright and he would start going down, then he would just lean the drill down and the spade bit would make that same. So I'm wondering if you could do that with almost like a bit and brace, or
well, the traditional method is actually with a bit very similar to that, except for rather than it being a spade bit, it's actually more like a countersink for a tapered head of a flat screw. And then on the very tip of it, rather than just being a point, it actually has a lead screw like an auger bit. And that way you can just start the tip of it in and very easily tip it, and it doesn't pop out. It doesn't pop out when you lean it down to a steep angle. And so, yes, there are 100-year-old bits you can buy that are designed to do that with a brace and bit.
Huh.
I've tried doing it with a Craig jig bit, but the tip kind of bounces around, and it's really hard to make that steep angle without it popping out of the hole. A spade bit might work a little bit better because it's a little bit more of a tip, but I don't know.
Cool.
I like the effort of chopping it out with a chisel. I find that to be fun and enjoyable, and plus I like the look of the square slot as opposed to the round slot. Everyone looks at that like, "Ooh, how'd you do that?"
Yeah. Cool. Well, since we have Tommy on, I think we should throw it back to Tommy.
Yeah.
And do we have any listener questions on the docket?
I know what I forgot.
For Tommy directly, which I was kind of surprised. I expected to have several come in, but
I forgot to open up my live chat.
Zack,
then you'll see why we were laughing when you're holding up your file handle. Then
maybe if I can find this thing before the end of the podcast.
Well, I do have a question for you, Tommy.
Yeah.
In a lot of your videos, you've talked about that you do a lot of luthier working, but you'd like to do more general woodworking. If you could pick your next project and the most fun you could possibly think about having, what would you want to make?
It's a tough one because I like to break it up. I like to build instruments, but like if you go back to your dresser, you wanted to kind of break up the pace of building that long process. So, what I like about building instruments, it's so many steps that you need to be careful about to end up with a product that's viable and playable and sound good. But at the same time, you need to kind of break it up a bit and like just do like I made a play button just for my 10,000, and I made a spoon just to kind of break my brain out of the like the seriousness it was in, or the so if I had to pick a project, it would obviously be another instrument, which I'm working on a set of drawings right now. I want to try to make a mandolcello, which is like pretty big. And then, but as for just a project, I maybe like a picture frame or like whatever is needed or available, I'll usually put on my workbench and work on. Yeah.
I find that definitely, like when I was working on this dining table that was taking me forever, and I was kind of hemming and hawing on the next step, and getting really kind of downtrodden, was to just, like you said, like just break that cycle and go do something easy and fun and simple and almost silly. Like, like I don't really need this, but I'm going to make it because I want to. Like,
yeah, but it's more for your sanity. Like it's a day project, and then you feel you've accomplished something, and then you move on from there.
Yeah, I feel like that's like turning for me. Like when I need to like meditate in the shop, is I'll throw a bowl blank on the lathe and just make shavings, and it's just really therapeutic for me. But so you mentioned Amanda Cello, and I've got a friend here in Virginia that has offered to let me kind of take a tour of his shop, and he's just an instrument maker. He's a luthier. Okay. Damon Instruments. Have you heard of Ralph Damon?
Nope.
No. Okay. But he kind of specializes in mandocellos. So I was gonna, yeah. But we do have a question for you from Make Brooklyn. Are mandolins more difficult than, say, an acoustic guitar?
Well, a mandolin has the arch top, so that increased the difficulty level, I would say, because you have to get into carving. Like just a flat top guitar, for example, would be the hardest part would be on the backside where you have to put all your bracing. And so if you're new to it, I would assume that it's easier to start with like a guitar that's got a flat top instead of going with like the full carving front and back of a mandolin. But then again, there is some mandolins that you can do with flat top also, so that would be a good place to start.
So that mandola that you just made for that client, it had that kind of curled horn almost on the top.
Yeah, the scroll. Yeah,
the scroll.
Yeah.
Tell us how. Like, I can't even wrap my head around that. Like, how do you how do you do that? Like, what's the process of tooling something like that?
Well, you make your layout, so it's like pretty much any type of carving. Like you get your baseline where you, like, for me the plate was going to be 3/16 thick, so I couldn't go any lower than that. And then like you get your finish height that you want, which is going to be the peak of the scroll, and then you trace down your line and you just carve it out. And then there's a lot of sanding involved, scrapers, but it's all about taking your time. Like when usually I do a scroll, I'm going to come in the shop and that's pretty much all I'm going to do that day, and then I'm going to walk out of it, just because I don't want to ruin the second one. So I'll do the second one the day after. But yeah.
So is that the actual instrument of the body is hollow, but that scroll, I guess, is that a solid?
It is hollow underneath. There's the kerf lining that goes all the way to that point, but at the same time, the neck block goes in the scroll to hold everything together. And there's the gluing surface as well underneath the peak of the scroll that's underneath. But everything else is pretty much hollow. That adds a bit of stiffness to the body. So if you compare, let's say, a tear-shaped mandolin and a scroll like an F5 mandolin, like same size, but one has the scroll and the peak, the points, and the other one just has the tear shape. is going to be a brighter sound on the F5 just because it has more wood and a bit more stiffness.
Very interesting. Sorry, I'm getting scared of instrument building just by the way you talk about it. I was like, I'm ready to do it. Then they got Tommy on, and I'm like, no, I'm not.
That's one of the things I want to do one of these days is actually like build a guitar, but build it really quickly, cheaply, and badly.
Yeah.
Just to kind of break myself into it. It's like, how bad does a bad guitar actually sound?
Bad. It's not necessarily how bad they sound. I mean, it's how bad they play in intonation. Yeah. Like if you can't tune it.
Yeah. But I'm saying, like, if I built a guitar in 2 days, how bad would it be? How bad of a job would I do on it? So,
it depends. I think it depends on the neck. I mean, that would be my biggest fear is, do you do your own necks or fingerboards and stuff?
Yeah, I do everything. What's hard with the necks is that, like, the customer is going to tell you, I want this, and I want it to look like whatever instruments that they're used to. So, like, you're going to have like a bunch of like brands and numbers like that relates to an instrument that they own. And then it's to try to put that into the neck when you don't personally have the instruments. So, like, I would have to go to a music store and try all of them, and so it makes it really, really hard. And it's all about playability for the customer and the sound, obviously. But for me, when I make an instrument, my focus is always on the sound, and then playability, and then how it looks. That's how I put my I don't want an instrument that looks good that doesn't play well. I want it the other way around. And even if there's like little nicks, or not nicks, but like little defects, or like it's handmade, right? So it's not going to be 100% perfect. But so I'm that's how I list my steps.
I think getting the frets right would be the toughest, like the most intimidating part, because they all have to be exact. Otherwise, your intonation would be all messed up, and that changes depending on the scale length. I think Gibson has a different scale length, and everybody has their own scale length.
Yeah. So Make Brooklyn has a question, kind of jumping off that, Zach. Do you measure each fret from the nut or from the previous fret?
From the nut. If you go from another fret, if you kind of screwed up like 1,000 there, and then it kind of builds up from there, right? So if you always go from the nut, and then you mark your measurements from there, if you miss one, like by 1,000, it's only that one that's going to be off by a bit.
Okay.
Yeah. The thing that think is strange about like guitar building, it's like, or not, I guess I can't speak of that, but like custom guitars, is that people are so, at least for myself, like I'm so conditioned to seeing Stratocasters and Telecasters and Les Pauls, and it's so hard, I feel like, to build something unique style wise or like body shape wise and have it look good, just because you're so conditioned to seeing these like iconic shapes, and if anything is like slightly different, it looks wrong. It's just one of the things that I've noticed, because there's some amazing like custom guitars out there, but they're not like those iconic guitar shapes, and you see them and you're like, oh, that's weird looking.
PRS did a pretty good job at it though. Like PRS, they kind of mixed the Gibson and the Fender into one model. And it's got a very nice line of guitars.
I used to work at a music shop, and I never could get into the PRSs. No. I mean, they're very well made, but I just feel like they're soulless. I don't know. It's a bold statement. I'm gonna get some hate mail, but
I mean, that's like the difference between playing, a Strat and a Tele is like, so far apart now that we're getting into electric instruments and not as much the acoustic, beautiful Tommy's work. But the difference of playing a Strat versus a Tele sounds completely different. And then, you jump on a Les Paul and it's just like this, like, super, the humbuckers feedback, just like, completely different sound. But I feel like that's more in the pickups than the guitar body itself.
It's a combination. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've always been a Fender guy. Well, Fender. I mean, I probably have like 10 guitars. I have Strats, Tellys, Les Pauls. I have a Firebird, and then I have a whole bunch of Gretches. I went through a Gretsch phase back when I played in a rockabilly band.
I could see that.
Yeah, they're fun. Fun stuff.
Well, looking at the tools, Tommy, what do you have a favorite or a specialized tool for instrument building that you use?
Well, there's a lot of tools that you have to make yourself when you get into lutherie. One of the specialized tools that the last one I made was to put the edge angle on the frets to have something constant, and instead of trying to hold the file to file the frets on the outside, I made like a little kind of jig that holds the file and then slides onto the fretboard. So that's one of the tools. And then obviously like the coping saws, and like there's a lot of hand tools involved, but like you just need to be creative with your tools and kind of and find ways to make things work.
Is a drum sander necessary for making the tops of acoustic guitars?
I used to do them by hand, so card scrapers, like they would have been done back in the day, card scrapers, sandpaper and stuff. It takes forever. Although it's fun because like I had a set of myrtle wood that I started guitar with, and the smell was just amazing. But I did get a drum sander, and that's my tool of the week for like the later. but yeah, no, I did get one, and it's just like it makes a day worth of work in 20 minutes, so then I can move on to the next step.
Yeah. So what's your top thickness in, say, an acoustic guitar?
About 100,000, I guess.
Jeez.
Yeah, about there. And then like the thing is like you want the piece of wood to vibrate, and that's why there's braces on the inside to hold the stiffness of the plate. So the more wood you remove, like your braces are going to be there to pick up the difference. And then when you tune your back plate, that's when you can remove the stiffness from the brace to maximize the vibration.
Okay.
So I have one for you. Assuming that you play guitar, at least enough.
A little. I went in the instrument building on the woodworking side. I learned guitar when I was like maybe like by myself, because I come from a family, we didn't have a lot of money to have a spare activities. So like sitting at home with tablatures and stuff. So I had an electric guitar growing up, but I had to sell it to get my driver's license. So like there's a big stretch that I didn't play at all.
That sounds like a Hollywood movie waiting to happen.
Yeah.
What's Ralph Macchio doing these days? Get him and Steve Vai together one more time. Well, my question is, when it comes to acoustic guitars, you a Martin guy? This is a polarizing question.
Yeah, well, Martin has their reputation. I like any good sounding guitar. Anything that's mass produced will have kind of the lemon in the line. I'm not saying that Martin has them or any other brand has them. Like it's just like if I pick up a guitar and I don't hear what I want to hear, I don't really go for that guitar. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
A friend of mine had. I've never owned a Martin. A friend of mine had one, and it was a beautiful sounding guitar. He used it for recordings and stuff. So
yeah,
it was really good. Yeah.
So, Zach, what's your favorite acoustic guitar?
I'd have to say Martin. I used to work at like a high-end music store, and when I started, I was like, man, I got like the whole Taylor bug. I was like, Taylors are the best. And then I evolved, and I'm like, yeah, Martin's my favorite. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I've got a Seagull, which
Seagulls are great for the money. They're really hard to beat.
It's one of my favorite. It's one of my favorite guitars. That and I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 acoustics. Four acoustics. Yeah. So it's one of my favorites to play. But Tommy, I have a question for you. I'm going to put you on the spot. So Rockbridge Guitars, they're based here in Charlottesville, Virginia, and their claim to fame is that Dave Matthews plays one of their guitars. So I know a guy that works at that shop. Their tops are 3/32 of an inch. Too thick? Too thin?
3/32. That's about 100, isn't it? 3/116. What's the stick is 62, 0.62. So that's that's about like what it would be like 90 something. That's about the same thickness.
Okay. All right, cool.
I think so. Yeah.
All right.
Make Brooklyn says that you said that PRS is like the Lexus of guitars.
They are nice guitars. They are. Yeah.
Cool. Well, due to time this week, I think we're going to skip the photo challenge and we'll move that on to next week. So if you haven't gotten in your photo, which is about contrast, go ahead and put that in. We don't have too many entries for this one.
This is like the longest running photo
challenge.
challenge.
No, this will be an entire month on this one. So it's a good chance. But we don't have that many entries. So
That's true.
If you haven't gotten in a photo for contrast, go ahead and do so.
Yeah, usually it's a fortnightly contest.
Yes. Just go on to Instagram.com and put up a picture from your shop with contrast in it and tag it with hashtag Creators Photo Challenge, and we will judge them next week. Hopefully.
Where did my we cut that right out of the show notes, didn't we?
Yeah.
Okay.
So this week we have a joke of the week that I think was very fitting, so I decided to throw that one in there. This is from Matt Thayer. Asks, what is the most musical tool in the shop? It is the bandsaw.
Nice. That's a good one.
Yeah.
That's really good.
Very pleased with that one.
It's one of our better contributions, I think.
Yeah. So let's get into what's inspiring us and what we're watching or reading. Will, why don't you kick it off?
So I've been getting back into stand-up comedians. So I've been watching Something's Burning, which is Bert Kreischer. He's a stand-up comedian. You might know him from I Am the Machine. Very funny dude, and he has people in the kit. He has other comedians come in the kitchen, and they cook things, and it's pretty funny. But go in the background while I'm in my shop.
Cool.
Yeah. How about you, James?
Well, I was watching some of the primitive technology videos, and then there was another one suggested on the side that I thought was one of his. It's actually from a channel called Primitive Survival Tool. And I really want to know the background on this channel. And it is two, I'm guessing, brothers they're in like culottes. And they're building houses. And they're, I'm guessing, somewhere in Africa. But they're building these, basic houses with just their hands, digging in the ground with sticks. And it was just incredible. I mean, if you think that I'm crazy in the amount of hand work that I put into things, you got to watch these. They dug an entire pool with sticks. And I'm not talking like, a kiddie pool. I'm talking like a swim around and it's actually like a river that goes around the house. And they built it with sticks. They filled it with buckets of water. I was absolutely blown away by it, but it's definitely
doesn't sound like the best survival strategy, though.
Yeah, I don't know what the name of survival tool, but yeah. So it's definitely, if you're ever in the mood to go binge watch something that completely runs away with your imagination, that is definitely worth it. Primitive Survival Tool. So yeah, what you got, Tommy?
I've been watching Pure Living for Life. So it's a couple that decided, I think they moved to Oregon, or is it Montana? I'm not sure. But they decided to start their life there, and they're building their whole life from scratch. So right now they're building their house, and they did timber frame construction, and they're lifting the walls right now, which is they went with a SIP construction. And I've never actually, I heard of SIP building, but I've never seen it in any aspect of how it was made. So I find it very interesting to see how they're doing it. And the last video I watched, they were actually raising with the crane, the roof sips, and then there was a thunderstorm and lightning, so it made it very interesting. A good channel to watch.
Very cool. I'm going to check that out.
Put that to the list. What you got, Zach?
I chose a guy that I found recently on Instagram. His name is, well, his tag is Damn If I Know, DAMIFINKN. Wow. Damn is spelled DAM. Yeah. He does a lot of sculptural work, and his aesthetic is just, it's like everything that it has all of the elements that I really like. It's very kind of like abstract, brutalist, industrial. It's just very, very cool. It's
with
like
a little bit of Frank Lloyd Wright.
Yeah, it's very like kind of rectilinear, but it has a little bit. It has enough like I don't know. You just have to look at it. Very, very cool stuff. Yeah, so that really impressed me. Something else that's funny in the live chat. Somebody asked if you happen to be related to Sean Stone, and I've actually in the back of my head, I'm like, man, guy looks a lot like Sean Stone. Like I saw your profile picture. I'll have you guys both on the show sometime just to confuse everybody.
Yes. Cool. Then let's jump into our favorite tool of the week. What you got, Tommy?
So like I mentioned earlier, it's my 17-inch CWI drum sander. I haven't used it in a little while, but it is like my go-to tool when I have to thickness, and so it was a big investment, but it's totally worth it when I need to use it.
So is that open-ended or not?
No, it's not open-ended. The
Okay.
thing with open-ended, they might tend to open up when there's too much pressure. So they might open on one side, and I didn't want to have to deal with that. So I went like 17-inch is going to be enough to do my lutherie work, and that's why I went with that one.
Huh.
Yeah.
Very cool. James, what's your tool of the week?
I'm going to have to go with one that I've mentioned in the past, and I will mention again many times over because it is my all-time favorite tool of all time, and that is the half-inch chisel. I don't know why, but it's an enjoyable tool, and it's kind of like the basic of everything else. I mean, you could do pretty much everything needed in woodworking with just a chisel. I mean, it would take longer, and it would be kind of painful in some places, but it would be an absolute joy to me. And so I keep thinking I got to do more builds where all I do is use a chisel because it's that much more fun.
Yeah, didn't you do a project that you built something entirely with a chisel?
Yeah, I built a box.
Out of firewood, right?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, I remember that one.
All right.
To do something more ambitious.
Yeah, build a guitar with just a chisel.
That's not painful enough. That's not masochistic enough.
He needs to make a pool with a stick.
Yes, a good sharp chisel, even a medium quality sharp chisel, it's a fun thing, and once you learn how to use it, it's an eye opener in many cases, at least for me.
Huh. Maybe I'll have to forge you a half-inch chisel one of these days.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
It'll maybe be a medium quality chisel at the best. What do you know much about the steels they use for that? Like, is 1095? Is that a?
There is such a wide range of steels because everyone has a different preference of what they like. I actually like mine to be a little softer. I would rather than be faster to sharpen and faster to dull. Just because of the way I like to woodwork. Some people like them absolutely rock hard.
You probably they're probably mostly alloys nowadays, huh?
If you get them, the most common ones are the same as your irons: A1, A201, and PMV11.
Huh. Okay.
Those are the three big.
You know what? Maybe what would be cool, because I don't think. I mean, I'm no expert, but I don't think it'd be too hard to actually forge one of those. I should do one out of like. I bet 5160 would be decent for a chisel.
Yeah.
5160. I should do like a 1095, and maybe someday I'll do those and send them to you, and you can test them out and see which one you like better.
That'd be fun.
Because I wouldn't be able to tell a difference.
And that's the thing I tell most people is when they get into chisels, and people ask me what's the best chisel for a starter. Really doesn't make a difference. I mean, honestly, in the quality of the steel, if you go to Harbor Freight and buy their cheap wooden handles, you will not notice a difference between those and like Lee Valley or you won't notice a difference until you've used them for a few years and you can actually feel what does the dull chisel feel like when it's halfway dull. Honestly, the steel is not going to make a bit of difference until you have used them for a long time and you know what they feel like.
That's why I would send them to you, because I could probably make one out of cardboard and I wouldn't.
Well, that's funny. I had a guy in the shop just stop by to have me. He wanted to get a dent out of a piece of wood for him, and he's like, "Oh, we use plane." I was like, "I'll just grab my hand plane real quick," and I just took my plane iron out. And he was talking about how he wanted to get more into hand planes. And I took my plane iron out and just touched it up on the stone, then a strop, maybe 20 seconds, and then put it back in. And it was like, razor sharp. And you should have seen his eyes like popped out of his head. He was like, that's sharp. That's really sharp. That's it. That's all you do. And I was like, well, I mean, keep them sharp. But yeah. That's funny.
What you got, Zach? What you like?
What are we doing right now?
Favorite tool of the week.
I'm gonna go with my ISO tunes. So they do sponsor me. I'll tell you guys that, and they just re-upped their contract with me. So
Zack Herbert's totally transparent.
Yes, absolutely. No, but I actually reached out to them because I saw it was at FabTech last year. April Wilkerson had them. I'm like, those are sweet. Those are awesome. I'd been using like the gigantic 80s running 3M Bluetooth headphones. You know what I'm talking about? Mm-hmm. I've been using those, and I want something that I can keep around my neck because I'm lazy. So if I'm at one corner of the shop, like using something loud, and my headphones are on the other corner of the shop, I'll just suffer through it. But with the little, they're like magnetic, so I can just keep them around my neck. So, but yeah, so that's my tool for the week. And they just started something. If anybody's interested in checking them out, I think it's like $10 off if you use the code CHF. So sweet. On isotunes.com probably is their website. I don't even know, but yeah,
cool.
I like their cheap ones too. They have two models. I like the
cheap ones. Battery life don't last long enough for me.
I think they last 4 hours.
Yeah, so that doesn't last a full.
But they're coming out. I don't have them yet, but they're like, I'm prototyping a new model for them that's pretty much the base model, but with like twice the battery life. I don't know when those are coming out. They might even be available now. I don't know. But I don't know. I have both the Pro and the basic ones, and I just don't like the things. I don't like the hard plastic things that wrap around my ear. I want to be able to like put them in and take them out in like 3 seconds. So that's why I like the cheap ones, and they're cheaper.
Cool.
What
about you, Will? What's your favorite?
What's my favorite tool of the week?
Yeah.
My Swanson Speed Square. I'm doing a lot of framing right now, so that thing is like, you can't live if you've ever done any kind of framing or carpentry. The value
rough angles and whatnot.
Yeah, the value of a good Speed Square, and they're cheap.
Don't get the plastic ones.
No,
don't do it. Don't do it.
Get the metal
Swanson. The aluminum ones.
They're steel, aren't they?
Yeah,
mine's aluminum.
Is
I
it
don't
Swanson?
like the aluminum ones.
No, you gotta
get one that's made out of metal.
Get the original.
Just don't get the blue plastic ones.
Yes. Well, I have to say we have wasted another hour of your life, and we are thankful that you have been here to do so. I do want to say a huge thank you to Tomy Hovington for coming on here, and we might have to have you on again in the future. So,
thank you for having me.
Thanks for being on.
That was awesome. We got to talk more instruments in the future. I do want to say a huge thank you to our patrons on Patreon, and you guys have really been what makes this channel happen. Particularly, I want to say a huge thank you to Darren Mates, Caleb Harris of You Can Make This Too, and John from John Made It. Thank you for your support, and we'll help out with more in the future.
And if anybody wants to order a nice, fancy, custom instrument from Tomy, where would they find that at?
You can check on my website at www.hovingtoninstruments.com.
All right.
Thanks.
Sweetness. Well, that about does it for this week. And until next time, have a wonderful day.
Later.
Adios.
Bye.